So, for people who want to basically criticize President Trump for what's going on with the Iranians, and also at the same time tout that, oh, let's remember when Obama was president, the US had a deal with Iran. You have a lot of people right now touting the Obama Iran deal as being one that was to our benefit, letting us monitor their nuclear program and do inspections. And some people are even saying, like, releasing funds the US was holding that belonged to Iran. Like, it's a really weird place to come from, when the reality is that there was at some point some Iranian money frozen by the US. That's true. But the Iran deal had nothing to do with that. The Iran deal was an actual payoff where Obama was literally giving money to the Iranians. And you'll remember Biden himself described it as pallets and pallets of cash being dropped off in Iran. So all of these stories about the criticisms of Trump and the praise of the Obama policies, it just doesn't tell the whole story. I know that some people want to point fingers and name call, but the whole thing is historically ignorant, and it's also ignorant of what is actually happening in that part of the world on the ground. So yes, while the deal was clear about nuclear proliferation, and while yes, that part of the deal was complied with, in that meaning, while they were getting paid by the US, they did not proliferate nuclear weapons. And that part is true. And yes, that part came true. But this little agreement did not magically make Iran into a bunch of better people. So the whole time, Obama touted the deal as a move that would welcome Iran into a family of nations. And that whole line was total and utter bullshit. And it was the entire time. And the people that were criticizing that policy at the time said that it was bullshit. Basically, Obama was paying a bribery charge. It was kind of like, we'll behave like the people you want if you give us pallets of cash. Now, Obama really did deliver the pallets of cash, but the whole thing was touted as completely reforming the nation and completely changing the whole landscape of the Middle East, and basically, welcoming Iran into a family of nations. But literally the only thing that Iran has to do in order to be welcomed into a family of nations is to just stop being radical Islamic terrorists. Yeah, that's it. That's all they need to do. They just need to stop being fucking terrorists. That's it. But the whole idea just ignores that while the deal was in force, number one, Iran sabotaged 10 oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. Number two, Iran shot down a U.S. drone that they were not over airways that they were not authorized, that they were not in control of, frankly. And then three, Iran literally used the literal pallets of cash that Obama gave them to successfully develop a ballistic missile program. So in this whole idea, all the critics of the Obama policy were correct. They said, well, what's to stop Iran from using that money in order to blah, 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 and, fill in the blanks with any hypothetical. But one of those hypotheticals of the time was from developing ballistic missiles. Well, the truth is, nothing in the policy prevented them from developing ballistic missiles, which is what they literally did. So they used money the US gave to Iran in order to behave on the nuclear landscape, but they used that money to build a missile program, one that they maybe couldn't or wouldn't have funded on their own. But we literally paid to arm that country. Is anyone detecting a theme here? So after all of these things happened, the oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, the shooting down of the drone, the development of the ballistic program, all of these things they weren't supposed to do while they were, quote, behaving. After all of these things happen, Trump exits the agreement. And supporters of the agreement and supporters of Obama are critical of that. While, yes, they did comply with the nuclear portion of the agreement, it would be a hard case to make that any of those other things I mentioned were positives. But he exited the agreement because literally everything that the critics of the agreement were worried about had actually come true in real life. So the notion of talking about the agreement that was in place that Trump ignored and canceled and all of this, it sidesteps the fact that the people that criticized Obama's agreement at the time were proven right. The critics of Obama at the time when the agreement was made were proven right, because Iran actually engaged in these behaviors while the agreement was in force and while Obama and the US was actively paying them money in order to engage in those behaviors. So then, after Trump terminated the agreement with Iran and stopped paying them the bribery fee, I'll call it, Iran immediately nuclearized their missiles. Like, that would be a big shock. Like, they didn't have the nuclear option ready to go. While they may have not, quote, proliferated it, and while they may have passed the inspections required by the agreement, the nuclear option was really hot to trot for them because it was immediately available when the agreement was terminated. And I find that, I don't know, ironic. And then right after that, they decided they were going to attack a U.S. embassy. So this type of attention getting in the hopes of receiving the payoffs that Obama was willing to offer, and that he indeed did deliver, this is all a pattern. In real life, where we live, supporters of the Obama policies on Iran have egg on their face, and they should sit down and be quiet, because literally every criticism of those policies has been proven true. Now, personally, I'm a hardcore libertarian on almost everything. And as such, I find myself in a place of not agreeing with the left and not agreeing with the right on a lot of things. But I'm a little more conventionally conservative on foreign policy, in the sense that I'm not an isolationist, and the idea that, for me, as a libertarian, while I do want to leave other people alone in every sense, in every way, taking U.S. influence out of certain situations does create a vacuum where influence can be added to a situation where that party's influence may or may not be good for freedom or democracy or U.S. interests or interests of other free people across the world. So when it comes to foreign policy, I actually have found myself becoming less of a really hardcore sort of purist libertarian in the last few years, and a little more mainstream or centrist, or what I dare would say some people would call conventionally conservative on foreign policy. But the thing here is, the big takeaway outside of all this is history within the last 5 or 6 years. And that's not a long time. I'm old enough to remember criticizing Obama for paying off Iran in hopes that they just simply stopped acting fucking crazy overnight. I remember that happening. And I remember saying at the time, well, this is stupid, because we're going to say, hey, your behavior is terrible, and we want you to stop acting that way, and here's tons of cash in order to stop acting that way. And my background's in marketing and advertising, and I'm an entrepreneur, have been for over 15 years. And in my world, you financially reward the thing you want more of. So the whole time I'm thinking, why are we going to give them tons of money for acting like crazy shitheads? We're saying, hey, don't act like crazy shithead terrorists, and then here's a bunch of money in hopes you won't act that way. You know, it doesn't even work that way with your toddler at home. You can't say, here's a piece of candy so you put your toys away next time. It's the same thing. I did not put my toys away this time, and I got a piece of candy. So maybe if I keep not putting them away, I'll get more incentives in order to convince me to put them away. And the Obama policy on Iran is literally the same thing. But now it's not 6 years ago or 7 or 8 years ago, as long as this policy's been going on. So it's not a trope anymore. It actually came true. In other words, the Conrad of 8 years ago, when I'm saying, why are we going to give them money and tell them not to do the thing they were doing when they've not exhibited any action to prove they're not willing to do that? Why would we do that? It sounded idiotic to me at the time, and it's just as idiotic as it sounds me right now saying, if your toddler doesn't put away their toys, give them a cookie right now and tell them that the cookies will keep coming if they put away their toys. No, that won't work, because they haven't already put away the fucking toys. So the history of this time has proven one side's take on the matter as wrong and one side's take on the matter as right. But the problem here is the hopes of paying them, Iran, in the hopes that they just stopped acting fucking crazy, would never work. And they never did. They were just Islamic extremist terrorists the whole time. The whole time. The whole time they were getting money from the US, they were terrorists. The only difference is, for years, Obama was giving them millions of dollars for them to be them crazy selves. And then Trump put a stop to it. And I know some of you love to name call on Trump, but whether you love him or hate him, and you can call him whatever you want, but the simple reality is that Trump's take on the situation, the take that he has had on the situation in Iran the entire time of his public political life has been proven correct. And the entire take Obama has had on Iran's situation in his entire political life has been proven incorrect. And it's a pretty clear line. The conservatives were right on this one. And they have been right about Iran since Billy Joel wrote the lyrics to "We Didn't Start the Fire." You remember all the way back then? Ayatollahs in Iran? And it's the same situation today. It's just cycles since the 1980s of a liberal president paying them to not be terrorists. And then a conservative president coming in and saying, we're going to fight them for being terrorists. It is a repeating cycle that has been going on and on and on, and only for political expediency. Because one side, conservatives, have been proven correct by history on this matter for 30 years. And it would be a hard case to make for that not to be true. Because all of these countries that Democratic presidents are saying, we are going to give this aid or we're going to offer this compensation in order to welcome this nation into the UN, or welcome, even less specific than that, quote, welcome them into a family of nations, which effectively doesn't mean anything legally. Every one of these promises only requires one thing. One thing. You will be welcomed into a family of nations. Simply stops being radical Islamic terrorists. That's all you need to do. Just stop being terrorists. And if you stop being terrorists for enough years in a row, then you will be welcomed back into a family of nations. And all of this stuff about, killing women and gays and having secondary rights for women and making women cover their faces in public and making women not be able to be in the same place with a man, and all of this really weird third world extremist shit, we'll probably fucking forgive that for like 50 more years if you just stop being fucking terrorists. And that's probably all you need to do. But until then, the US military might come and they might fucking kill you.